Hi everyone, welcome back to the garden. Yes, my garden for a change. After a few different exotic garden tours and a busy few weeks in between, it's finally time to start my slightly overdue exotic plant overwintering videos for this year. And if you're new to growing a tropical style garden, or you've recently picked up some bold exotic plants, then I've actually got a full playlist on my channel talking about how to get all kinds of different exotic plants through the colder winter months. But this weekend, I've actually had a few people message me all about the same plant, Tetrapanax. So I thought, if those people want to know the answer, then hopefully this video will help you guys out as well. So Tetrapanax, I'm assuming you are familiar with them, otherwise this is a pretty weird video for you to be watching. But essentially, they're one of my favourite exotic plants, one of the best plants you can grow in the UK if you want a jungle look, or simply a plant that brings drama like few others can. They grow incredibly quickly, absolutely tower over you after just a few short years, and have incredibly big leaves. We're talking over a metre wide. These are seriously impressive looking plants, and it's quite easy to assume that a plant that brings so much drama, so much vibrancy to garden in summer is a proper diva in winter, and that couldn't be any further from the truth. Tetrapanax need very little, if any, winter care to get them through our UK winters. So what do I do? Well, firstly, with young plants, if your plant is less than a foot tall, if it doesn't have a woody stem yet, then that plant can be a little bit tender. And the way I sort of see it is, a frost can cut back, or a hard frost can, really sort of soft fleshy growth. And if your plant is all soft fleshy growth, then that plant is liable to be cut back by a hard frost. So you really want to give it a little bit of TLC just that first winter, and that can mean either putting it in a polytunnel or greenhouse, just keeping it frost free. You don't really want to bring it inside, but if that's your only option, I suppose a bright windowsill, and just keep it on the dry side, just ticking over through winter. It'll prefer that to being stuck outside where the hard frost can freeze the whole plant through. If your plant is a little bit bigger, we'll say 1 foot to 2 foot tall, and it's got the beginnings of a woody stem, then that plant is a good bit tougher. So if you got it planted out, I wouldn't do anything to it. I'd maybe have some fleece on standby in case the temperatures got really low. We're talking less than, say, -5, -6, a proper prolonged freeze. And then I would just cover it with a fleece for the duration of the freeze, no longer. Because the only Tetrapanax I've actually lost in the past, or should I say died down to the ground because it did actually sprout back up again, is one that I wrapped up for too long. It got damp in there, the humidity was too high, and it rotted through. But left to its own devices, chances are that plant, it might have lost its top, but then just re-sprouted further down, kept on growing in spring without a problem. So if your plant is in that kind of bracket, somewhere between that and that tall, I would actually just leave it outside, not do anything to it. If it's in a pot, which might freeze through a bit quicker than one in the ground, then potentially bring it closer to your house. Because that pot's more liable to freezing through, I want to keep it just away from the frost pockets of your garden, potentially again in a cold greenhouse or polytunnel, just to keep the worst of the cold off it. And if your plant's a good bit bigger, if it's been in the ground for a few years, then I wouldn't do anything to it. These are very tough plants, and even the hardest frosts, they might nip the ends of the buds, but that plant will sprout back out again in spring, and by midsummer, you won't even know that there's been any cold weather at all. So yes, as a general rule, I would look after small plants, young plants. You will hear people say they're perfectly fine to leave outside, but I generally like to give my little plants a little bit of extra TLC, just to keep them ticking over, so when they do get planted out in spring, they've got the best start possible. Now, one exception, a time when I do actually protect mine, is in spring. And that's because the new growths it bursts through is actually quite vulnerable to being nipped by those late frosts. We're talking April, May time. So on my plants, while they're small, I do tend to just put a fleece over them whenever there's an April or May frost forecast, but I only do it for that night and that's it. Other than that, leave them to it, not a problem. So one last question you might ask, why has my Tetrapanax got purple or black leaves at this time of year? Don't worry, that's perfectly normal. They're essentially deciduous in our climate, so they don't even need a frost, just a few cold nights less than around 5 degrees, that's enough to cool them up. But don't worry about it, come spring, that little twig in your garden, it will start growing away. Incredibly tough, very fast growing, and it won't even look like winter happened at all. So I hope this video has been helpful. That's briefly what I do for Tetrapanax in a nutshell. Good luck with yours, I'll see you in the next video.